Welcome back to the High Expectations podcast. Myself, Donny, my awesome co-host, Jake, and we have an amazing guest with us. Welcome, Juliana Whitney.
Hi.
And shout out Jake Gallen at the Guest List podcast for putting us in contact. I believe you're on episode number 23. So once you guys are done watching this, please go over and check that out. Give him a follow as well. To start it off, this is a weed podcast, so we want to get a little bit of background about your businesses and about everything you've been involved in. So if you just want to start off and give us a little background about who you are and how you got involved in all these weed industry businesses.
Okay. Do you want me to go with the business thing or like who I am? That's a big
Who
question.
you are.
If you want to start off with who you are, that'd be perfect.
Who am I?
The most complex question, right?
Yeah, it's super complex. I'm like, existential crisis. So who am I? I'm a Vegas native, essentially. I wasn't born here, but I did grow up here. And I'm just an entrepreneurial spirit at heart since I was a kid. And always like in my mind, dreaming of what I would be one day. Like how, when they ask you, like, what are you going to be when you grow up? And I never knew. I would just make stuff up. I didn't even have anything I wanted to be. I was like, the options you're giving me don't sound great. So I'm not sure yet.
Right.
And I would like open restaurants in my front yard and stuff. And like how I had a little delivery service in my little town, and like people would call and then I would bring them grilled cheese and like hot dogs and stuff.
Wow.
So that was my first company.
How old were you when you did that?
I was 7 when I did that.
That is awesome. That's way above the lemonade stand.
Yeah.
So all you 7-year-olds out there, step up your game because Juliana's doing it right. Like
my mom was like so annoyed. She's like, we got to shut this down. You're taking and I'm like mac and cheesing it up. And I was always like trying to figure out what business I wanted to do because I knew in my heart always an entrepreneurial spirit, and like the idea of working for other people literally felt like death. I was like, that feels like doom,
Yeah.
So I went to UNLV for my 2 undergrad degrees, graduated, freaked out. I was like, I don't know what the hell I want to do. I have no idea. So I went to grad school and I started getting my MBA. And then while I was getting my MBA, I started a nonprofit organization called That Adopted Girl.
Okay.
And we worked with girls in the foster care system. And so that got me finally like actually starting to use my business drive and like my passion and wanting to have a purpose, because I also always want to have a purpose. I'm not just driven by making money. I'm like, how do I make money doing something really cool, like that I love. And I was getting my MBA and then I took 2 years off because my parents were like, you are spending a lot of time doing this nonprofit jam and not paying attention to school. So I took 2 years off, and that's when I got into cannabis because my friends were starting one of the first dispensaries in Vegas called Las Vegas Relief, and I needed to get a job since I was taking time off school. And I was so like, I hated applying for jobs.
Yeah.
Like, this is the worst. And so they were like, oh, you could work here when we open. And I said, okay.
Yeah, you're like, I don't have to apply. Perfect. Just give it to me. This sounds like exactly everything I wanted.
Sounds good. Like I did the interview, so it wasn't like nepotism, but it was, that's how I got into the industry. And I didn't even have any interest in the industry, and I didn't even consume cannabis. And I was just like, I'm just here for the ride, like I'm just taking a little stop here while I take a break from school. And then I've been in cannabis ever since then.
That's almost like fate right there, though. It just brought you to it, and now it's what you're doing. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I love the entrepreneurial mindset in that you knew you always wanted to run your own business, and that was your passion. And that's something that my uncle told me too, that I've always lived by, that when people ask me the same question, what do you want to do when you grow up? I always said, I want to run my own business. And people say, well, what business? And I'm like, well, I don't know yet. And people look at you like you're crazy. But now, even like this, running a podcast, 3 years ago, I would have never even considered starting this podcast. So I just know that at the end of the day, you want to do your own thing. And at the end of the day, spread a message, help people, change the world. So even when I listened to your podcast the first time with Jake months ago, when it first came out, I really connected to you on so many different levels, because you basically tried to do everything. And at the end of the day, you are really becoming successful at doing everything. And a lot of people advise not to do that and not to spread yourself too thin.
Yeah.
but you found a way to manage that all.
How do you
I
manage that? Like your time, you have so much going on in your life. How do you go about that?
How do I manage it? Oh man, it doesn't feel like I have a lot going on. I think I don't know. I got into spirituality a lot. I've always been pretty like woo woo and like into the universe and energy and all of that. And then I really started deep diving into meditation and kind of learning more of the philosophies. And there's one philosophy of ease. Like if you're doing something you're meant to be doing, it will just flow and it's not such a hustle and a grind, you know? And I really try to live by that and follow the things where I feel like I'm naturally succeeding or thriving or I'm like naturally pulled to do them rather than trying to push doing things that I don't really like jive with.
Oh, that
And
that makes a lot of sense. This book I'm reading right now, it's called Trying Not to Try, and it's basically that same philosophy of where if you're just constantly hitting the nail on the head and you're trying to just ingrain things, it's also that's where you'll meet the resistance. Whereas
yeah,
if you do just go with that flow, a lot of times the things that you want will come to you. You know, it's like somebody who's been single forever and they're like always trying to go on dates, always trying to find that one. And it's like you're single for 10 years, but then as soon as you're like, screw this, I don't even care anymore. You know, you have a date knocking on your door every 10 seconds.
exactly. It's exactly like that. So that's really, I think, kind of how I do it, I guess.
Yeah.
Is there something specific that got you into spirituality, or how did you discover yourself down that path?
Uh, yeah. So one, I think I'm an old soul. Like I've always, since a kid, just been very like, what is life? What are the
Well, yeah, you
stars?
started a business at 7, so you're definitely wise beyond your years, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
So it's definitely that. And then I was adopted and I have a relationship with my birth dad and he is so spiritual. And so all my conversations with him as a kid were always around that kind of thing and like those philosophies.
Hmm.
And like, are aliens real? Obviously, yes. And so we always have those conversations. And I think it just like, and he told me later he did this intentionally, but it planted those seeds in my brain. And then they just started like growing as I got older. And it like started with quotes and stuff that I aligned with. And then I just went from there.
I mean, just from talking to you for a little bit and then just from like watching the other interview that you've done, I can tell that you work a lot on your mindset and on like I'm big into like how the brain works because the brain naturally is a creature of habit. And if you let it, it'll take over your life and make you do things you don't want to do. And just hearing you speak and like hearing you extrapolate your thoughts, I can tell that you are very aware of your mindset and cognitively like improving yourself. One of the things that from Jake's podcast that I heard you say was I think, and you shouldn't say I think because obviously if you say something you think it, and just from that alone I can tell how aware you are of your brain, of your mindset, and I think that's awesome. Like it's really it's inspiring, you know, because one of my biggest issues, as you know, I'm not a philosopher or anything, I don't really have a title, podcaster maybe, you know,
Yeah.
but I think just wiring your brain to work for you, I think that's one of the biggest things that people struggle with, and I can
It's
tell you do a really good job with that.
I really do, and I'll give you insight into like really why that piece of it started, and I feel like that like personal and brain development focus then branched into spirituality. That was like the way it kind of went.
Mhm.
But I really struggled with mental health when I was young. Like I had a straight up like two severe meltdowns as a kid. Like one of them when I was 12. I think I was still in public school and I guess just got depressed beyond what I could even comprehend at 12, you know? So I like got drunk, went to school, like wound up in the
At
ER.
12?
And I
Okay.
had IVs and I had breathing tubes in my nose and woke up and everyone's like, why did you do this? I'm 12. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I think I was just like stressed and depressed and like didn't know what to do or like what to say, you know? And so I was 12 and my parents put me in therapy. So it was a blessing in disguise because I've been in therapy now almost 20 years. So I think that's really helpful as that part of me even being raised was like therapy was
Yeah.
from that point of view of like, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? What does this mean? You know? And then at 17, my parents put me into adoption specific therapy, and I started kind of like unpacking all of that stuff. And that year, my friend and I took these diet pills that are now completely illegal, but it triggered my brain so bad. And I had like total mental, I don't even call it a breakdown because it was more just like complete mania, but it was
Yeah.
like nuts. And so then like my last year of high school and then going into college, I was in this like crazy mindset. Those two things, along with the fact that I've been in therapy for that long, I think have made me hyper focused on mindset and what that means, and like how, and seeing how hardcore your brain can impact like the way you are, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that was
Um,
probably the driver.
Yeah, the one piece of advice that I always give to people if they ask for one thing, it's to become self-aware.
Yeah.
And I never actually went to therapy. My mom wanted me to go, but she's a therapist. She's
Okay.
she's a major in psychology, sociology. So I didn't ever have therapy sessions per se with her.
well, that's kind
But
of weird doing therapy with your mom.
yeah,
right?
but just
Like-
realistically, we had we had
Probably
an
can't
open
be as
relation.
open.
Yeah, we had an open relationship enough though to where I would tell her things, and she was almost my therapist. So even at a younger age, I started to realize that I'm feeling certain ways for certain reasons. Like even I had anxiety growing up as a kid, and when I
Yeah.
would have school presentations, I would have certain things, I would feel sick and I would go to the nurse. And as a kid, I didn't know, oh, I'm nervous, that's why I'm sick. I would just actually feel sick. So it wasn't me trying to get out of my presentation or hide or whatever. I just would naturally feel sick when those things happen. So once I realized that's why, then you can start attacking those problems head on and addressing them. And yeah, I think that's another thing once again that we connected on, that the earlier you start that, the better. And at any age, it's a good time to start to become self-aware.
Seriously. Seriously. I'm like watching so many people. I'm so glad now with like this or the like kiddies now, that parents are starting this stuff so much earlier. Cause I'm like, man, the amount of people, even in our generation, that start like even thinking about being self-aware when they're like 40. I'm like, you
Mhm.
missed out on so much time when you could have been
Right.
doing like dope stuff, you know?
Yeah, it's a long, hard journey for sure. If you get there at 40, it's gonna be
Yeah.
tough. Because
There's a
especially
lot.
because now you have all that stuff ingrained in your head, and that's one of the hardest things for people, I think, is rewiring their brain. Where it's like you've done this for so long, and it's like, how
Yeah.
can you even get out of that? And that's why I think a lot of people start to feel that depression and start to like feel that anxiety, because it's like, I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to do. I don't know how to get out of this. Like,
Yeah. And sometimes even you do know how and you're just not doing it. And so then you have to unpack, why am I not doing it? What does that mean? Where's that coming? It's like so
right.
meta.
That's
All
a, that's a big thing too, because I'm gonna go ahead and make a broad statement, say everybody has done that, where it's like, I need to do this, and you're supposed to do it, and then you just don't do it. Like, I'm gonna go to the gym every day this week, and come Monday, you're like, no, I'm just gonna
right.
sleep. And that's one of the things I find most interesting about the brain. And when I bring up like brain science, is like your brain thinks that even though your brain knows you want to go, it thinks that you don't want to go because your brain is naturally lazy and it is a creature of habit. So I think breaking through that barrier it's something that we've seen you do. I've seen you do it just from talking to you, just from seeing your interviews. I know you've done that for sure. And I'm interested in seeing like how we can help other people do that, because I mean, I'm a very positive believer. I think one day we could live in a utopian society if everybody worked together. Highly unlikely, but I'm that type of thinker. Um, what would you say to somebody, like if you were trying to give them advice about how to craft that mental stability and maybe get out of their old ways?
How to craft the mental stability. First, I think you just have to build your why. Like that's the biggest driver rather than being driven by the what, like weight
Mhm.
loss isn't that exciting unless you have a big why behind it, for instance. Um, I think crafting your why, really figuring that out can just help as a motivator. And then from that point, I just ask myself whenever I want to make a change or even make a decision. And if I'm scared or I'm resistant, then I just ask myself if I'll regret not having done it when I die. And if I'll like have regrets for not doing it, then I'm just gonna freaking suffer through it and get
Yeah.
myself to do it. And then I think there's also I would have the tendency to do this. I'll still do it. I'll way over magnify what something is. I'll be like, okay, to work out every day. And in my head, I have to be like elite athlete working out if I'm going to work
Yeah.
out every day, you know? There's got to be like an hour and a half. I got to have all the perfect things. So even removing that and being like, let's change the expectation of what working out every day means. Like, let's start somewhere different. It makes it less of a challenge to do, you know? So I think just the mindset of even approaching change or growth,
Mhm.
it's like where you have to start even what you think about growth, what you think about what it means to change. I still struggle with it though. So yeah, I
We
really,
all do, you know.
yeah.
One of the things you brought up though is the why and not the what. And something
Yeah,
I had seen just the other day was people who focus on becoming rich don't become rich, but people who focus on all the things that money and wealth could bring them will
yeah,
get there. And I
yeah.
think that's basically what you just said. And it's like I think that is a really good way to go about it for anybody who needs that extra push. Transition though, at what age were you adopted, if you don't mind sharing that?
0. I was
Okay.
adopted the day I was born. My parents were in the room when I was born, and
Okay.
they took me home like the next day, I think.
So did your biological parents know your adoptive parents?
Uh, they they didn't know them before, but my dad ran into his cousin like walking in New York City and told her they were looking to adopt, and his cousin knew my birth mom, and so she connected them. So they'd met before I was born,
Okay.
obviously. Yeah,
Okay.
and did all the paperwork, but they weren't like friends before.
Okay, got you. That's interesting. And then um do you want to talk about the adopted girl for a little
Sure,
bit?
if you want to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
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 we'd
we'd love
love
to
to
hear
hear
about it.
about it.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
love all the
great.
charitable work. We're so big on like we have high expectations for the world and we just want to spread good, and that's like a really awesome thing
Love
that you
that.
do. And if
I
you want to
love
talk about it, that'd be great.
I would love to talk about it. So that adopted girl, the name is a little strange, especially because we work with kids in foster care who are not adopted kids. They're in foster care.
Hmm.
This is how that happened. I was writing a blog and I still want to write a book, but I was writing the blog then. I think it was 2014 because I wanted to write a book. And I thought, oh, if I have a blog, then I'll get followers and then I'll write the book and I'll
Yeah.
have a whole, audience. And my blog was called That Adopted Girl because it was me. And I was, just writing about adoption and stuff. Well, through writing about all these topics, I was getting messages from people that were like things I never imagined anyone would ever say to me. It was like, I think one girl that always sticks with me, I always bring her up, is she told me, she was like, I wish I'd been aborted. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then there was like a 70-year-old woman who wrote to me who was still having like struggling with her experience from foster care because no one had ever let her talk about it or
Hmm.
like given her the therapy and resources. And so then I was just drawn to do more than write a blog. So the way my brain works, and I've learned to work with it better now, but it just is like, okay, let's do this, Now I'll go, okay, let's do this. Wait, let's take a second and think about how. Then
Yeah.
no. Then it was like, okay, cool. So I just immediately named it That Adopted Girl, the nonprofit, figured out how to get a 501c3 and just launched a website and just came up with like 5 things. Okay, here's the 5 things that we do. But I did have the why. And my why that I like really drew from what I wanted people to know about my experience as an adopted kid, but then also what I was seeing reflected back to me from these people that are writing to me is just that piece of self-worth that like it's, I think I talked about this on Jake's too, but being given up by the people who create you is like
It's hard to comprehend.
it's hard to comprehend. It gives you some kind of even though like not aware, like I was given up for adoption the day I was born, right? It's not like I was with my birth parents and then left and had this like cognitive, like real visual understanding of that
Yeah.
separation. It was like my brain still knew, like my little baby brain remembered it, and it can really mess with your self-worth because it's like if anyone's going to love you, it's those 2 people and they didn't keep you.
Hmm.
So then what, so the self-worth piece was really the core of That Adopted Girl. And as it progressed, I was really, I think really focused on it for like 3 solid years. It still exists, but I haven't done as much with it recently. But it progressed to doing events with girls 12 to 18 years old who are in group homes. And all of the events were focused around self-worth. So we would have like a speaker, and we would do family dinners, and have like makeup artists come and give them these life experiences that they may not have otherwise. And the idea behind that being like showing them what they are worthy of, and that, you know, your life circumstance hasn't given you these things, but it's not because you don't deserve them. Like, they are still here for you, you know? So that's where, that's that adopted girl.
That's so awesome. I mean, not only that you did that and you do that for these girls, and you're kind of a role model for them, as showing them somebody, because I see you as a very strong woman, and I know that those girls look up to that, and that's just great for them. And not only that you're doing it, but that you were able to accomplish it on such a large scale, because there's so many people like that want to do good, and, you know, it's hard to get those things organized. So for you to not only have the why to do it, and then actually conquer that, and give those girls that self-worth, and give them somebody to look up to, and give them an experience that they'll never forget, and boost their experience. It's truly like wonderful. Like, you know, thank you for doing that in this world. We need so much more of that in this world.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got to get back to it. I'm like, I haven't done a lot. Hold on. This is like a 2020 problem. My foot is falling asleep.
that just developed in 2020.
Yeah. Well, on a podcast, my foot falls asleep because I'm sitting on the floor in my living room. The 2020 issue.
That's the worst. This is super off topic, but like the worst thing to me is like catching a cramp in your calf when you're sleeping, and then you have to like stand up. Oh my gosh.
I've actually never experienced that. I'm gonna be real.
You're very lucky. You're very, very lucky. It's excruciating.
Okay.
Yeah, we have established a very, very strong why and how important it is. Do you want to dive a little bit into the cannabis industry and how you got started with your actual businesses yourself, the Whitney and Co?
Would love to. So as I said, I was at the dispensary, and I started front desk, medical just started, medical cannabis in Nevada just started. And we had like 5 patients a day when we first started. And because it was new, the owners of all the companies were the ones delivering their product. So, you know, who now someone would be like, oh my God, that's the CEO. Like, they were just like, yeah, that's Brian, you know?
Yeah.
Just waltzing in with buckets of his newly packaged cannabis. Like, no one knew what they were doing. They're like, do you like this? Does this work?
Yeah.
It was just
this
like
was
that.
in 2014, right? You said
This was 2015.
2015. Okay, yeah. So really early on in the cannabis.
Brand new.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And just the way I am, I was like, I'm going to network with all these people. If I do that, then I know all the owners, CEOs, COOs of every cannabis company in Nevada. If I just introduce myself to the people as they come in. And so I did, and I just kept networking. And then, you know, my brain's always going, what do I want to do? I don't want to just work here at the front desk at this dispensary, you know? And I thought I wanted to get out of cannabis. I was like, and that was frustrating me because I didn't know like what in the world to go to next. And then this guy I worked with, who wound up being my business partner in my first company, was like, Juliana, you can combine anything you like doing with cannabis and it'll be successful. And I'd done consulting with my friend Liza for a little bit prior. And I was like, oh, I could totally do consulting with the cannabis industry, because I was seeing everything from the inside and seeing everything that's going wrong. And it was just like beautiful chaos. And I saw so much opportunity to optimize things. And so I decided to start a firm. And our first client, we actually did for free as a proof of concept. And it was because I knew them. Like, I was going out there for tours because they're all the way out in Mesquite. Okay. And I saw their little dispensary space every time because they're a grower and producer also. And so they were running that piece, but the dispensary piece was empty and not operating. And every time I went out, they said it'll be open in 45 days. And it never was. And so one day I said, hey, can I open this for you? Like, can I prove that I can do like the standard operating procedures and the inspection with the state, train your staff, get your inventory, like launch this dispensary. Let me see if I can do it because I think that I can. And they said yes. So I was working at the front desk at a dispensary and opening another dispensary. Like it was nuts. And it worked. Like we opened it and they passed the first inspection. And now they have, I think, 5 dispensary licenses and they're huge. They're doing great. So that's like how I got started. And then I just kind of kept trying to build the company, but I was still working front desk. And then I had a potential client and I was offered partial ownership in cannabismagazine.com. And I always try to be really transparent with the COO of the dispensary so they didn't feel like I was being super shady.
Yeah.
So I told him I have this potential client and I've been offered ownership in cannabismagazine.com. And he thought I was quitting. I wasn't quitting. I was just trying to tell him.
Yeah.
But because he thought I was quitting, he's like, okay, well, do we at least have you for 2 more weeks? And I was like, yeah. And that was my 2-week notice. I had way too much pride to be like, oh no, I'm not quitting.
Right.
So 2 weeks later, I'm like out of the dispensary. This is like February 2017, I think. That was that. Like, lost my health insurance. I didn't have any money coming in. I didn't tell my parents. Like, I didn't want anyone to know. I was like, okay, I got to figure this out. And I think April, I signed a client for like $60,000. And then was good, just rolling.
That's awesome.
It's crazy when I say it now. I was really blessed because the guy who wound up being my business partner, he like helped me through those couple months.
Mhm.
And then the company just paid him back once we had our first paying client. Oh my God.
That's great. I mean, I'm glad it all worked out. Like, I'm sure there was times you were just like nervous and like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's crazy that it all worked out. And one of the things you said was when you were working front desk at the dispensary, when these business owners at the time, all the business owners were coming in to deliver their product, you noticing that opportunity to network them is one of the most brilliant things I've ever heard in that space, because most people are like, I'm going to work this job at this dispensary. I'm just here to sell weed and sell weed related products. I don't really care what goes on. I'm here to get my $10 an hour and then I'm going to go home and do what I want to do. But you, it seems like you're always looking for that opportunity. And I think that really probably sets you up for your success because nobody else was doing that.
Yeah, actually. And I'm really grateful for that. And I'm never one to be like, oh, how does my brain work differently from other people's brains, you know? But if I look and I don't know, have you ever heard of the Clifton Strengths Assessment?
No,
I haven't, no.
Okay, so it's like one of those kind of a personality test, but it
Okay.
specifically assesses your strengths as it pertains to like your career and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And my top one wound up being strategy. And it made me understand myself so much better because the strategy strength is seeing like a million pieces and like bringing them to one because
Mm-hmm.
you just like all at once, it makes sense, you know? And it's that like in my mind, I always have my long-term strategy in mind. And so then as I go through life, I see the pieces to play. And
Yeah.
so like, oh, knowing these people, that's a piece to play. That'll, definitely roll out in a good way. I'm so grateful to myself.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Like, I'm definitely taking that for myself. Like, if I ever get in a situation, I notice those things, like, I'll definitely be more cognizant of witnessing those opportunities.
Relationships are everything.
Yeah.
No, really, really.
And there is always that luck factor that plays in. But another lesson, a piece of advice to give is always just put yourself in the right place at the right time and give yourself as many opportunities. Like you said, every person that walked in the door, you introduced yourself. So maybe all 30 of those people aren't going to be able to help you, but if one of them can, it was worth talking to all 30 of them. So just to give yourself as many opportunities as possible.
The law of large numbers.
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
You pick up enough clovers, one of them will have 4 leaves, right?
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, and it kind of ties into you building these connections, is how are you going about getting your clients and setting up these strategies for these businesses? Is it you actively pursuing multiple people? Is it a lot of people actively pursuing you? Is it a little of both? Do you want to explain that process a little bit?
It's turned into a little of both. So the first company I started was called the J. Whitney Group.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 2 business partners. That company ended last year, but it was like my training ground. And in that company, most of our clients were referred to us eventually. And so that was good, but that I was like full blown hustle mode when in that company. Like everything was very like heavy
Mm-hmm.
because the business partnership wound up not going that great. And then so that company ended last year and then rolled over. I think September of last year, I got to start Whitney and Co on my own. My first client was a referral, and which was awesome. They're in Illinois. They're so cool.
That's where I'm
Hey,
from.
shout out Illinois.
Yeah. Nice. And then my brain was like, okay, we've been living in this world of referrals, and this world of referrals is great, but I've always wanted to scale. I've always wanted large companies like to grow anything that I have.
Yeah.
And I don't see that happening if I'm just going on referral to referral, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So still a lot of my clients right now are referrals. However, I've also hired a search engine optimization company so that I can get clients that just find me.
Yeah.
And I changed the name of the company also. So Whitney and Co. I turned into a holding company so that my name doesn't have to be tied just to cannabis. And I made the consulting strategy piece of cannabis into Cann Strategy. So now it's Cann Strategy.
Okay.
And that way it's like easier to market.
That's
largely,
brilliant.
You know,
You're really smart, honestly. You think everything through, and like it seems like you're 10 steps ahead, which is awesome. Like,
oh, that's really nice.
thinking that through and knowing like you don't want your name just to be tied to cannabis is a broad thought that a lot of business owners, they don't see that, you know what I mean? And they do limit themselves. Whereas it's always, you're not limiting yourself. You're always opening more doors. It's truly brilliant.
I have like a fear of limiting
Of closed doors.
Yeah. Like,
open up.
Oh my
That's
God.
hilarious.
But yeah, so I'm excited actually. We just I finished the rebrand of Cann Strategy like very recently and just launched the site like 2 weeks ago. And now the SEO is rolling and we're going. So that's where that's coming from. But still most of my clients currently right now are referrals.
That's cool though.
Yeah.
So when you get a new client, walk us through like what are you doing, right? You just got a new client. What's the go strategy? Like how are you approaching it?
Okay. So I love getting new clients. First, let me tell you what we even do with Cann Strategy.
Okay.
So and it's just a general thing because there's so many pieces. So I like to just say generally, here's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We help investors to get into the cannabis industry and operate their company. And so that can be, we can help them buy licenses. So help them find places to purchase. We help them get licenses in competitive markets. And we help them do operational things they need to do in order to start up and launch and then continue on. So for instance, I'll give you my Illinois client, for instance. They were this awesome group applying for dispensary licenses in Illinois. And I like to make sure that all of our applications are just like killer. So my firm's tiny and we always score up with like the largest firms in the industry.
That's awesome.
I know, it's crazy.
Killing the game.
Like, what? So we like to really get to know our clients, like really talk to them a lot, get their why. Like a lot of firms will say, here's my expertise, I'm going to tell you,
Mm-hmm.
But I just like to see what's your dream? Like, why are you doing this? What's your dream? What is it that you envision happening? And then I figure out, how do I take my knowledge and make that dream come true? And that is kind of like the strategy piece, I guess. I like to call it. It's like, how do we fit these two things together to get to this end goal that they have of, let's say, 10 dispensaries in Illinois,
Yeah.
From there, onboard them. We always get to know all of their owners and do all the things you got to do, write all their plans for them. We always make sure the plans aren't the same for every client. So they're very similar, but like every client has a different dream. So we weave in, those pieces to it and really try and highlight what is really special about them and then put everything together right and tight, the best of the best.
Yeah, exactly. Give exactly what the people want. And it's awesome that you really tailor your service to each client specifically. And that really just puts no limit to the price tag. It's just how much can you satisfy them, and can you provide exactly what they're asking for and
Yeah.
efficiently? And it seems like you've really mastered that really well.
I think that's a reason why a lot of companies fail, is because they're so robotic and systematic in their approach, especially in client-based business, where each
Yeah.
client is different and everybody does have a different why. And maybe their dispensary, they don't want it to look like the other dispensaries in other states, and they don't want it to operate like that. And so that's another thing. It's really brilliant how you go about it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, real quick. I was gonna say, I think it is amazing too that you get to live your dream while going out there and trying to help commit other people to living their dreams. And not only are you helping them open dispensaries, but if you can help them run a successful business, you're really changing their lives completely.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like my like real purpose is to help people realize their vision and their dreams, whether on an individual level or business level. So this has kind of been like great. And especially now that it's really starting to grow and roll, like since I left those business partners, everything's been so much easier. Everything has flowed a lot better. And yeah, it's cool. I actually have one client right now that I'm helping them find their executive team. And they're so cool. I worked with them to get their licenses in Nevada. And they are donating 50% of their profits to charity from their dispensaries. Awesome. So it's like so cool to have opportunities like that too, where I really feel like I'm impacting in a real way,
Yeah, you are. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Shout out to them for doing that. That's a really
exactly.
cool thing to do.
Cool.
Shout out to you for helping them achieve that goal.
Yeah, it doesn't end at cannabis, and it definitely does not end at business. It's much bigger than all of that.
Yeah.
I did see that I think it's a new project, or you had incorporated it recently, the leaf sheets.
Yeah.
Is that something? Could you explain that? I didn't fully understand that.
I'm so excited to tell you about leaf sheets. So leaf sheets, it's actually an idea that I had from like 2016 when I first started. And the idea springs from the fact that, so the piece of what Cann Strategy does, the licensing piece, I think will be a service that eventually isn't really needed. Or if it is needed, you'll just look to like lawyers to help you, like not so much consulting firms, because eventually licensing won't be so insane and so competitive and so limited.
Yeah.
And so in 2016, I was thinking, okay, if it's the fact that at some point, the primary thing that my firm, because that was the primary thing like my first company did, if it's the fact that the primary thing we do is going to be obsolete, essentially, how do we be the thing that makes it obsolete? Like, how do I make sure I'm not just like blindsided? How do I take part in the next phase of the way?
Don't get affected by the disruption. Be the disruption.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, how do we do that? And so, and this is an idea that other people have had. I've seen them. They've tried to execute it. So it's nothing like revolutionary, but it's essentially taking the golden documents and information that everyone needs, which is the standard operating procedures, in order to apply for competitive licenses, taking those and making them into a product that people can purchase online. And then not only that, the additional steps that we're taking are, so one reason clients hire me is my knowledge and my team's knowledge, so they can call us, we strategize, we come up with plans, whatever. The online platform, so Leaf Sheets won't have that, but we are making a do-it-yourself guides to help like guide people through, okay, here's how to put your application together, here's how to put the state regulations in there, all the things you need to do. Our blog is insane. We like answer all these questions for every state's cannabis regulations. Like I've read, I think 20 state cannabis regulations, was like answering questions for every single one. And so it's essentially trying to create what a consultant would be, but for people who don't have $7 million in the bank, they have maybe $100,000 in the bank or 500,000, and can pay for all this stuff. And they're like real true entrepreneurs willing to put in the work. I think there's so many of those people. And Leaf Sheets is for those people like trying to give the cannabis industry a chance at actually being cool and fun and different, rather than letting it be completely taken over by like
corporate,
dodgy, corporate, boring, like usual stuff, So Leaf Sheets is really badass.
Oh, that
Really.
is badass. That's a great like product. I think it makes it a lot more. I think it will reach a lot more people that aren't, these big corporations. It's really good.
Yeah, I'm like really stoked.
Yeah,
And we have
people.
like a vendor network too. Let me just tell you. Okay, so the vendor network, we found the like companies in the industry that we really believe are quality companies. So like marketing, PR, point of sale software, packaging, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Because there are so many options that businesses can get lost. I've seen it happen. They get lost. They are like hiring all these random companies that then don't work together. So they're like getting tripped up over all these different technology. It's a total mess.
Hmm.
So our vendor network is like a curated selection of companies we really believe in and know are valuable. So we know like, okay, if you buy this product or service, it's solid, you're set. You're not going to be like, oh no, I got to switch, you know?
Hmm.
So we have that, just like all the resources for entrepreneurs in cannabis to succeed, like hard, like really succeed.
Yeah, you're like a one-stop shop for everything you could possibly need to start a cannabis business.
That's
That
the vision. That's the
Yeah,
vision. Yeah.
I see it. I'm here with it. 2020 going into 2021 vision. I like it. I think it's really good. I think the company that you're running has the base to be a very successful company. And me and Donnie were both investors, not necessarily we invest in like the stock market, but
Yeah.
so one of the things I look for in a company when I invest is it actually a sound company? Do they have room for growth? Is it like a lot of companies look good on paper, but is what they're actually doing successful? And what with your
Yeah.
company, I see that it is a good company. It is doing successful things, taking constant steps forward, improving, growing. And that all ties back into really who you are, which is, from my perspective, this person who is just getting shit done. If you can't find a way, you find a way.
Yeah, I'm at least trying. So,
That's half the battle, right?
yeah.
Yoda would be proud.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a couple things before we head out that I did want to touch on.
Totally.
You mentioned your sociology degree, and from
Yeah.
Jake's podcast, really tying sociology into business
Yeah.
is something that I think gets overlooked
Yeah.
and not everyone understands. So I think sometimes that you do have to understand the business, you do have to understand the industry, but to
Mhm.
be a leader and run a business and have employees that will work for you and will not give their life for you, but would just work their to the bone for you, just to
Yeah.
have those loyal employees, just to
Yeah.
really connect to them. I think it's just one of those things that, yeah, like I said, it's overlooked, applying sociology to business. Do you do that on an everyday basis, or could you just touch a little bit more on how you actually apply the sociology to your business?
Totally. So just so you have a little background, just in case whoever didn't hear Jake's, is that I got my two undergrads, sociology and communications. And in my explanation of why, I would always tell people it's because I want to have my own companies. And I knew I've always wanted highly scaled companies, large companies. And just in my gut was like, companies are people. You have a lot of people all working together, and then you sell products and services to other people. And if you scale globally, you're going to different societies. Like, you have to, this is a thing you have to understand. You cannot just understand spreadsheets and numbers. That doesn't tell you like the magic of how to sell. It tells you what you've sold. It doesn't tell you the magic of like how to grow belief or vision or freaking anything. So sociology, I love it. Sociology, one of the coolest things about it, I remember I loved statistics, sociological statistics, because it's the craziest thing. Like, you can draw correlations between something and like something you would never think that would be affected by that. So like, I don't know if you've ever read Freakonomics, but they have so many, and this is not the best example, but one of them, the examples they have in there is like the abortion rate and the crime rate. And those aren't two things I ever would have connected.
Correlated, yeah.
Yeah, like I never would have been like, that thing over there is tied to this thing over there.
Yeah.
And like, I love that so much. And I think in business, that's so important too, because it's like, this little action you take over here, you may not see that it's going to impact this thing all the way over here, like for instance, with the dispensaries I work with, you may not see that providing water bottles and snacks in your break room for your employees is going to impact your profit. That may not make sense to you, but that is a real thing. Like that's a real connection. So using sociology in those terms, like understand how does a whole thing, like a whole network of human beings existing and doing all their things, like how does each thing impact the other thing, and how do you make that work its best, for the best outcome. So I feel like that's how sociology really helped me a lot. And then to understand too that when you go into foreign markets, you better understand their culture.
Oh
because
yeah,
you
straight
make
up.
them really silly mistakes.
Yeah. There's a lot of very tedious things in other cultures that like we do that is like just plain out disrespectful. Like if you do it to them, it's just like, yeah, you're not getting the deal.
Did you hear about, hold on, I have to tell you this
Yeah,
one.
go ahead.
So I think it was Huggies. I love this example so much. Huggies went to like Japan or something like that. And they had the stork, how we have a stork that carries the
Yeah.
baby, and they kept that on the package. But like in this, wherever they went, a stork meant like death or something like that, or it like didn't even make any sense. And so they weren't selling at all. And then it turned out that like a peach actually represented like birth and a baby. So then once they changed their packaging to have a peach on it, that is the simplest thing to research. But like, because this big company didn't even think of it, they're like,
Yeah.
we're a company, cool, we're going to do what we do and it's going to work because it just works. Like, no, man,
Yeah.
you got to look into those little things. Like your little animal on your packaging stopped your sales.
Yeah. And now you're focused on rebuilding that relationship and fixing that relationship, whereas you could have just been steps ahead already.
Yeah, which costs so much more to do the fixing.
Yeah. And that's why a lot of companies fail, because they're not thinking those steps ahead. And like it's something so simple as a stork or a peach.
Exactly.
Another one I know that I learned in school that they taught us about the cultural differences. To me, when someone hands me a business card, I immediately put it in my wallet because when I put things in my wallet, they're important. I don't want to lose them. I always know where it's at. I always have my wallet on me. But in some cultures, I believe it's Chinese culture. I don't want to pick the wrong one. But in other cultures, that's disrespectful.
Be careful, Donny.
Yeah, exactly. In other cultures, that's disrespectful. When you get a business card, you hold it in your hand until you're completely done with the interaction. Because otherwise, people are kind of looking at it as like, oh, this is your business card. I'm going to put it in my pocket, and now it's out of my sight, out of my mind. So just to learn those cultural differences.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
One of the things
something new every day.
One of the things you said though, was like having the break room have snacks and waters for your employees. And I think so many employers and business owners don't understand this, that those breaks that those employees get and the comfortability of that room, or whether there's TVs or whether there's something to distract them from work, that like if you go on your break, and we used to work at this place called Brooklyn Bowl here in Las Vegas, and their break room is literally just white walls. Like it's reminiscent of jail. And it's like, you almost don't even want to be in there, which some people may say that makes you want to go back to work, but no, it really doesn't. But if you go into your break room and there is snacks and it's comfortable and you can tell your employer cares about you, you're that much more willing to do a good job because you work for a company that you actually love.
Exactly. It makes such a difference. People don't think about it.
And it's just those little things. And I'm glad that you're paying attention to them, because it makes me happy that we're doing this interview, because I know you're going to be successful. And I can look back at this interview in 10 years. I'm like, yeah, we had her on there before she was a billionaire, And it's because she's putting snacks in the break room. Take the advice.
The little things.
It's the snacks.
It really is, like if I walk into break and, you got a nice little coffee there for me, I'm like, oh yeah, great. I can go back to work. Easy peasy. I go in there and, just white walls and nothing. It's like, you're just like, oh, geez.
You just made me think of something I want to tell you guys.
Yeah, go ahead.
You guys do your format, like long format?
What do you mean?
For the recording, like podcasts?
Yeah.
Yeah, we normally do anywhere like over 30 minutes to an hour. But it's just like, long form conversations is what we're aiming for.
Yeah, we never try to cut it short. Like if we just talk, we just talk.
I'm like, I don't want to take too much time, but
no, you're good.
No, yeah, we got all the time in the world.
Cool. Okay, so you just made me think of this because you're like the white walls and that, people not understanding this. So do you know of Abraham Maslow?
I've heard of him, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't know much about him, but I have heard of him.
Okay, so Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's a pyramid. And it goes from like your very base of needing shelter and food, water, to your very top of self-actualization. And even above that, now people are saying he had a next level of self-transcendence.
Mm-hmm.
But the concept is that if you don't have these other levels, you can't get to that top level, right? So I love to put that in terms of business. And I actually have a concept for dispensaries that if I can make it real, I would love to do it. And I would totally call it Maslow. But would be that like understanding that if you want the top performing employees who see your business as their own and do their best in sales with the customers, learn all the products, like get you the best results that you're looking for, you better make sure that their base needs are met, which means you better be paying them enough, or else that means that all that's on their mind is that they can't pay their bills at home. Like that will never leave their mind. So then they're not going to perform well. Or make sure that they have snacks. Like if you think, oh, well, they could go get a snack in 15 minutes, that's so stressful for someone to try and run out of a place, go find food, run back, So it's things like that. Like just make sure those needs are met, that there's a comfortable place to be, not just a place to be. And yeah, that those like base needs are met. And I think that it speaks to the customer facing side too, that like things smell good and feel good. It's comfortable in there. The people they interact with, they're comfortable with, like that relationship building. It's also important. But I love the Maslow thing because it like really speaks to that and is like a good guide for knowing if you're
I
hitting.
think I've heard of the pyramid. I just didn't think I knew what the name was. But it is so true because, I mean, ultimately, although you're the CEO at the top of the pyramid, you're not interacting with your customers on a daily basis, depending on what your business is. But in a dispensary, if you own a dispensary, you don't see me when I come in, right? I see Kendra who's selling me something, and if she's pissed off because she's sick of working for $9 an hour and this job treats her like shit, I'm gonna feel that, and I'm gonna be like, all right, well, I mean, unless they have a great deal, I'm not coming back. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah. Like
So important.
when I worked at the dispensary, I'm so grateful I did that because it gave me so much insight into like the very customer facing piece of it. And there were customers that came just because they liked talking to me or talking to one of my coworkers.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only reason they were there. They weren't
Yeah.
there because we had a better deal. That's not why they showed up.
I always like to say people build connections. Businesses can build connections, but the people build the connections. And like I said, we're investors. One of the things that I look at is, who is the CEO of the company and what are they doing? What is their life like? Like, are they a good person? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you see these companies where the CEO is not a good person, you know that their employees are most likely not getting treated the best. And therefore, how can you expect the best service from that company when everybody's not on the same page? Like I'll take Amazon, for example. Hopefully Amazon doesn't sue me for giving them backlash. But, a lot of people say, their conditions aren't the best. And I think that's like that for a lot of factory jobs. And but I think they do make up with it where their pay is more fair than a lot of other jobs. But, you get a lot of people saying, I don't like working there. It's harsh. It's not worth it. And once you get those people in your business saying it's not worth it, that feeling transcends to your customers. And like you said, it's the snacks are so important. That's the
Yeah. And imagine in a dispensary, like I remember watching it happen. I was the first one that left the dispensary. Everyone else wound up leaving shortly after, not shortly enough, but they were like, what are you doing? You're crazy. This is the coolest dream. I was like, no, I'm telling you, everything you're being told you're going to get, you're not going to get, know? And eventually what happens is people, especially at the start of the industry, would come in like, oh my God, this must be the coolest job. And at first, everyone felt like it is. And then you're feeling like, it's not, get me out of here, get me out of here. People can feel that when your response to this must be the coolest job is like,
yeah. You're like, oh, yeah, it's so fun.
It's like, this is great.
And at the end of the day, there has to be obviously some sort of chain of command. But to me, it's always, what do you treat someone like first? Are you going to treat them like a person first or your employee first? And to me, I only choose to work for companies that will treat you like a person. And I have seen many places that really just treat people like employees and they are just a number and that's all they look at them as.
My first 3 jobs were like that. It was like, just do this, do that. You're here to work.
I don't even get it.
No. Life is supposed to be fun, and I think a lot of when people who do just look at the spreadsheets and just look at the numbers and the data, they miss out on that personable aspect. And,
Yeah.
you know, I think with your background and your experience, you have a heavy ability to lean into that, especially with your degree in sociology, that personal experience and that just communicating with multiple personalities, multiple cultures. And that sets you, in my opinion, far ahead of people who do not know how to do that. Because like we said, ultimately, if you don't have happy workers, that you don't have happy customers, you don't have a happy business, it's not going to achieve longevity.
Yeah. I had no idea this interview was going to be like the best motivational hour of my life.
That's what we try to do, you know, and you've given, I think the people listening, you've given them so much, and hopefully they take what I take from it, and because that would be awesome. One of the things that we saw on, I think it's your Instagram, is the Life Inversions, and it says it's coming soon. Do you want to can you talk about that a little bit? We were really curious about it.
Totally. So Life Inversions is, I've always wanted to do a personal development platform. And because I'm so into personal development. And Liza and I, my friend Liza and I did JNL TV, I think in like 2014, 2015-ish. And it was trying to do that. Like we would talk about motivational topics and do videos. And I just didn't feel ready then. I was like, this isn't it. This isn't hitting right. And now that I've like at least had some experience and like applied a lot of these philosophies and I feel like I've really internalized them more, I want to do like a personal development type platform. I guess kind of like what Marie Forleo does.
Okay.
But my way, you know? And that's what Life Inversions is. It's at least a working name for now because I'm like launching Cann Strategy and Leaf Sheets. I don't want to spread myself way too thin and also have a third like full blown project. So I'm waiting to like launch Leaf Sheets and then I'll put more heart into the Life Inversions thing. But I love it. I love that stuff.
I think that's some of the most valuable, aside from like pure business and like, stuff that supports your business, is that self-development and just like that mindset training. Like that is what people need. And that's in order to get to this better society that we all dream of, where everybody's like, well, not everybody, there's people like that are positive, but there's a lot of people that are like, oh, life sucks. This is a piece of shit. I think that is going to be a valuable currency going forward. And people with that knowledge and the track record to prove that they have been able to do it will ultimately be successful in that space.
Yeah.
Because, there's going to be I think one of the big things I noticed is like when The Secret came out, I don't know how familiar you guys are with the book, The Secret and the Law of Attraction, but when that came out, that's really when people started moving towards this, let's start thinking about how we think and how does that affect what goes on in our life. And since then, in these past, I don't know when that came out, I was probably really young. So almost 8 to 10 years ago. And just seeing that transition from then, when I first noticed it, to now, there's so many more people, awake or woke or however you want to distribute the word to it. And doing that Life Inversions, I think that's just going to keep boosting it up.
Yeah, I hope so. Have you heard of 5D consciousness?
No.
Please
enlighten us. Please.
Sounds amazing.
So right now, December 21st, this December, is supposed to be like the shift into, or this whole year really is supposed to have been like part of the shift, but December 21st is like the day that all the spiritual people are talking about. And it's the shift into a higher consciousness overall, like for the whole world. And that some people will, be on that path and others will maybe not, maybe like go on a darker path, or I don't know what that other path is. I haven't read much about it, but so they're calling it the shift or like the ascension. And it is like valuing our overall consciousness, more so valuing the things like we've been talking about, like valuing connection and love and those more soft things, rather than all of the just valuing like data and numbers and things like that have been the most highly valued things to this point. And so on a spiritual, energetic level, it's meant to be this like huge shift that's occurring. So December 21st, make sure you like, I don't know, meditate, light some candles.
Yeah, for sure. I'm on it.
Source.
Is that related to the like people say we're shifting into like, I don't know how big in astrology you are, but people say we're shifting into like the age of Aquarius. Is that, do you know, that's like the similar thing, right?
What's that? Yeah, it's exactly that.
I was like, oh, we're shifting into the age of Aquarius. I'm an Aquarius. I'm like, this can only be good for me.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like my mindset early on, you know. I'm like, Age of Aquarius, let's do it. Like, this is our time to shine.
I love it.
But
Yeah.
no, I hope so. I hope people do start shifting into that. I think we would all be better off, especially if our politicians could start shifting into that. That'd probably help us all out a lot.
Yeah, I've seen it. I mean, they say there's all these ascension symptoms. So like that so many people have been going through. And it's like a lot of emotions are starting to be really nocturnal or feeling like nauseous or like joint pains, headaches. You might feel like you're like going totally crazy. And that was me for a minute in the past couple months. And I was like, I think this might be the end of the line for me. I think I may actually be going nuts. Like I gotta get a moo and a good couch. And this is it. I've lost my mind. And then I read one, I kind of came around, and then I read like how that's like an ascension symptom. I guess I found it interesting.
No, that is interesting.
I was sure. I was so sure.
That's like how Google diagnoses people though, and they're like people are like, oh, my left arm hurts, and they read it and it's like brain cancer, lung tumor, like all types of awful shit. But no, I would like to know what all the symptoms are, you know. Hopefully I'm feeling some. I'm ascending. I'm going to, after we do this for sure. I'm gonna
we're gonna watch. We'll watch
what was
some
and
videos.
you said the name of that pyramid was what? It was the start with the
Maslow.
Okay. Yeah, I gotta look that up, put that in the brain.
It's good. It's good stuff.
Do you have any other like interesting things like that, like base things that contribute to your philosophy about life?
Similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, I mean, like kind of along the like a certain like thing you can refer to.
Let me think. I refer to Oprah a lot. She has a lot of philosophies I really like.
Yeah. I like her ability to give away cars. If you're in the audience, that's I'm trying to get in the audience.
My favorite thing about her is that like how she started and where she's at, like that now she does Super Soul Sundays and talks about all the spiritual things, all the philosophy. And her show originally started among like Jerry Springer.
Yeah.
And then she was the one to be like, I'm going to do this differently, you know? And then now she's like vibey with like the Dalai Lama and like Deepak Chopra. I think that's so cool. But like the way she taught, I refer to her a lot because of the way she like her massive from being so poor to being total billionaire and like the way she talks about that and finding purpose. So this year I've been thinking a lot about my purpose. I felt like Socrates or something. I feel like I've spent so much of this year just like philosophy.
Yeah.
Like figuring out life. And her thing with purpose is like, think about the things people tell you you're good at just in everyday life, you know? So for me, people would say like, oh my God, you're so inspiring, or you're so like, you have so much energy, or I get, you know, I feel so good after I see you or whatever. So I was like, okay, cool. What do I do with the fact that people find me inspiring, or I help them feel better and more clear? You know, how do I apply that? But nothing is like solidly a theory as Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
No, that was actually perfect. That was
very well said.
I had something I was gonna say. With it was about Oprah. Gosh, why can't I remember? I'm sorry. Donny, do you have anything? While I digest my thought.
I think that all your businesses tie everything together. And I just think once again, it's amazing that you took your sociology background and your life experience backgrounds to create this cannabis business when you were never even interested in cannabis in the first place. And then now after all of this, you're going back to the original, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to inspire people. I'm going to create this life inversions to help people really find themselves and find who they are. And it's just one giant full circle. And I think once again, things kind of just line up. And when you don't force things, like we were saying earlier, they kind of just fall into place. And it seems like it's working out well for you.
I guess so. We'll see. Right. But it feels that way. Feels good.
Awesome. I totally forgot what I was gonna say.
I was trying to give you a chance,
but I have something else I can bring up. You know, I bring more to the table than lost thoughts.
I do want to say, have you guys done vision quests? This is something I would tell anyone to do if they're going into like seeking spiritual understanding.
I mean, I haven't done a specified vision test. I've like done psychedelics
Vision
and stuff.
quest.
Yeah, where it's like it feels like it's a vision quest, like I'm trying to find some shit out. But I've never like sat down with somebody and like really done like
a vision quest.
A guided vision quest or
yeah, same. I'd never done a guided one, but I have done hallucinogenics to try and help with anxiety and depression, and took them more for personal use and not as much recreational. So I dabble.
Yeah, like I dabble here and there. I think vision quests are awesome, whether they're guided or not. So I've done a few of them with shamans, and then a few just on my own, like with friends, and we would like journal our intention. And I think, I did like 4 of them with shrooms, 1 with ayahuasca, and then 3 with combo. And of the 3 combos, like, it's my favorite.
What exactly is combo?
It's frog poison.
Oh, okay. I've actually never heard of that.
Yeah, it's this little green frog in the Amazon, and it has goo on its skin that's poisonous. And so they just scrape it off so the frog doesn't die or anything.
Did you have to go to the Amazon to do this?
No.
I actually have heard of licking the frog, so that's where that came from. I never knew the term, but yeah.
And it's cool, and it's like so ayahuasca is like heavy. Ayahuasca is a grip, and it's long. Long
is it longer? Is it longer than shrooms?
I think it's around the same length, but it's so intense. It
feels longer.
Yeah. Oh my God, it kicked my ass. But I love it. It is good. Combo, what I really appreciate about it is that it also has physical cleansing effects. So some people actually just do combo for the physical cleanse. But it is only like 30 minutes. So it's not like your whole day is gone, you know? Yeah. And it feels like, the way I put it is, it doesn't feel so much like you hallucinate or see anything, or like you dive deep into the depths of your psyche. Mm-hmm. It feels like any like blockages you have between thoughts or ideas are lifted. Like, and any fog is lifted. So like everything's just really clear. And so then ideas can connect, and like your understandings can connect. It's really cool.
No, that's awesome.
But
I have to look into that.
Can you see these?
Kind
of. A little bit, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So those are from that. Because you do these little spots, like burn spots on your arm, and then you don't do them. The shaman does them. And then, and then the poison, it's little dots of poison on there. And then you're like super sick you get really sick, but ultimately it's a good experience. But I love Vision Quest. Like, I did all of 2019 and most of 2020. It feels like I was on a Vision Quest, and it's good.
I think a lot of people who have done them, or at least have experienced like psychedelics or hallucinogenics, do have that closer understanding to like, or at least they're able to ask those questions in their own mind about like, what is my why? Who am I? You know?
Yeah.
And hopefully after this, a bunch of people don't go down to PetSmart and burn themselves and then get a random ass frog and like.
You need a shaman.
Yeah, you need a shaman. Yeah. It's a specific frog, Yeah, don't get carried away. PetSmart does not carry them.
Always very intentional. Like, I'm huge on doing things with intention versus just like, if I just took frog poison, I don't think I would have the same experience if I didn't have all that intention. And
how did you get introduced? Like, how did you go about becoming able to do that, or how did that happen in your life?
So I not always wanted to do ayahuasca. I'd wanted to do ayahuasca for a few years, and then I met this woman in 2019, and she was like, oh my gosh, I've done it. And then she bought me my first like ayahuasca journey for my 30th birthday in 2019. And I was like, cool. So I did that. And then she had been going through a hard time and a divorce. And so she was also like seeking all these spiritual experiences, one of those being combo. I actually didn't know what it was. I'd never read about it. I didn't know what it was, but I'm a very like, sure, yeah, let's do it. So she texted me and was like, hey, would you do combo with me this Saturday? And I was like, yeah. And then Googled it. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, well, let's do it. And like, that's literally how that happened.
That's
And
awesome.
I'm supposed to do it 3 times in 1 moon cycle. So I wound up doing it 3 times within the next like 4 weeks.
Why is that? Do you know why?
Actually, no, not. I don't solidly know why.
If the shaman says that's what you're supposed to do, I'm sure
Yeah,
that's what you're
trust the
supposed
shaman.
to do.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, you have to do this for 3 moon cycles. It has to be very specific. The poison has to be laid out just right. You're like, all right.
That makes sense. Exactly. But I love it. It was like I wouldn't have sought it out on my own, but I'm so grateful that I did it. And I think I'd wanted to do vision quest for a long time because I'd been so into like mental like development and then spiritual development. So this was kind of that next like, let's see if that gives an extra push to get deeper, you know?
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, when I had first done shrooms, I had just looked at myself like, wow, I'm a drug addict. Like, I'm such a bad person. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm just trying these drugs. And then later on, when I had actually found their purpose, I'd used them for, like I said, to try and help anxiety and depression. And then even later on, I had found out how many successful entrepreneurs have actually used acid or shrooms to help them create their businesses or even just, like I said, find themselves. So when I learned all that, I just kind of tied that to, I always wondered why, once again, the why. So to me, I think the why is people that don't want to try hallucinogenics are scared of losing control. And I think entrepreneurs, by jumping into these businesses and having to do a bunch of things you've never done before, it's that uncomfortable, uncontrolling feeling that people are afraid to step into. So that's, to me, that's the connection that I found. Not that if you want to be an entrepreneur, you should automatically do hallucinogenics. But to me, that's where I found the connection on why that type of person is attracted to both things.
I totally agree with you. We're drawn to it. We're drawn to like what happens when I do things that have no guaranteed like experience or outcome. Like, let me see what might happen.
Exactly.
It's like living in that, which is crazy. Sometimes I'm like, this is crazy. What am I doing?
Yeah, being uncomfortable can produce some of the best results. And the more and more you become comfortable, you just make yourself more and more uncomfortable. And you'll keep progressing and keep growing.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs are almost like scientists in a way too, because it's also like, especially with the scientific method, you know, it's like establish your hypothesis, test your hypothesis. What does this do? What does this do? So I think,
I love that.
Although a lot of entrepreneurs will probably not relate themselves as scientists, I think in that way they are. Especially in I think the thought process is very similar between a scientist trying to discover a new treatment or a new something and an entrepreneur trying to create a business that works.
Totally. I love that. I love that. The scientist thing. That's cool. Now I feel like I'm like a badass mad scientist.
Yeah, right? It's just constant trial and error.
We are all Einsteins.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Mini Einsteins.
That's crazy to me though, because one of the things you said earlier is you don't like to think that your brain is so much different than everybody else's, but you also realize you were good at strategy. And now that I brought up Einstein, it's crazy to me to think that there are people though, like Einstein, whose brains are just different and they're just able to do different things. And although we all are made of stardust or whatever, we're all the same, each of us is also different. And like nobody knows really how the brain works, or like we kind of know. So it is, I think, in the way that Einstein was brilliant at what he does, I like to think that every individual person is brilliant at something. They just have to unlock that within their mind. And not everybody's going to be good at math, or not everybody's going to be an entrepreneur, but you could be really fucking good at painting and like be a Picasso, you know, and you don't even know it because you've never painted. But as soon as you touch the brush, it's like, whoa.
I love that. That's a really cool way to look at things.
I like to think that. I like to try to see the positive in people and, you know, life. Because I feel like ultimately, if you're not looking for the positive in life, you're going to always catch yourself down or always searching for more. And I don't want to relate that to a feeling of content, because I don't necessarily think contentness is the best feeling to have, even though I think there's nothing wrong with being content, especially if you get to the level that you want to get to. But I also am a person who's very driven and I'd like to always look for the brighter side and always look forward. I never like looking backward. You know, there's nothing you can do about those things, but there is things you can do about what you have going on.
Yeah. What's next to come?
Yeah. Well, that was an absolutely amazing way to end it. Is there anything else specifically you wanted to talk about?
Nope.
Yeah, I think we nailed basically all of your endeavors. Go follow
Guys.
Julia Whitney. Do you want to shout out your Instagram, all of them, or just want to give your personal? I'll put the links in the description as well for whatever you want.
So,
But
well, Life Inversions is one of my Instagrams. Then there's also Cann Strategy and cannstrategy.com. It's CANN. Yeah, and that's basically it. Let's go with those.
Is it 2 N's because you not only can, but you super can?
It's 2 N's.
because cannabis.
I know.
Thank you. As long as you actually knew that,
You
we're
guys
good.
are like, is your spelling? You're clearly not the Einstein of spelling. That's clearly not my purpose. I actually lost in a, this is a funny story just to end the thing, but I actually lost in a spelling bee, and I was a really smart kid, but they gave everybody else like house, dog, city, and then they give me children's, which has an apostrophe in it, and I didn't include the apostrophe, and they're like, out. I'm like, what the hell is this?
Oh no.
But,
That's
you know,
unfortunate.
they steered me away from being a master speller, so now I got here and I'm a podcaster.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, I will post the links to all of your accounts below if people want to check you out, which they absolutely should. And please, if you enjoyed this interview, go check out Jake Gallen's The Guest List Podcast, episode 23. And yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yes.
Yay.
Cool. That
Yay.
was perfect. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was dope.